Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Ron. Uh, I think indeed a very comprehensive and fulfilling report we have seen yesterday, and I was just going through the report which has been compiled by the ICHR. And I must first of all congratulate the whole team of ICHR for putting such a comprehensive report together. I would say that a beginning has been made in terms of the international community, especially the human rights organizations and human rights groups are beginning to understand and to basically be concerned about what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir in terms of the human rights violations over the last 20 years or so. As far as the UPR is concerned, I think it's a major leap forward, considering the fact that in 2008 we had only 4 recommendations, and now we have 169. And out of these 169, many recommendations are directly concerned with the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. And obviously, vis-a-vis the general situation in India as far as the human rights situation is concerned. I'll just generally talk about some of the issues, first of all, which we are aware of what's happening in mainstream India in terms of the current situation of human rights in that part of the world. Especially, I think, over the past few years, we have had many interactions with different delegations of Dalits who have visited Kashmir, and in fact, I have visited Hyderabad and Chennai myself, and addressed many conferences where these groups, whether they are the Dalits or the tribal groups, or even religious minorities, whether it's women and children, and there's an urgent need for the Indian state to address these human rights situations in terms of sexual assault against women, the fact that communal violence is happening, and the recent situation in Assam. I'm sure you must have heard about that. In fact, we had a delegation from Assam in Kashmir in the month of Ramadan, and we had an interaction with them. More than 300,000 people have been displaced in that part of the world, especially in Assam. So I think there are many factors to the UPR report which refers to India, but because my focus is definitely going to be Kashmir in terms of what is happening there. So I must say that definitely this is something very encouraging to see in the UPR, that issues which we have been raising for a long time in terms of human rights situation on the ground have been addressed, especially the issues of the black laws which are in session in Jammu and Kashmir, the issue of disappeared persons, and the issue of mass graves. I mean, these are 3 important issues the people of Jammu and Kashmir are facing in Jammu and Kashmir for the last so many years. And I must say that considering the fact that there are even Indian organizations or even official organizations like the State Human Rights Commission and the National Human Rights Commission, which have fully acknowledged the fact that human rights violations of the worst kind are happening in Kashmir. And I must say the fact that it was a State Human Rights Commission which has now accepted, or which has now taken up the issue of the mass graves. And it is very unfortunate the way in which there is absolutely no regard from the state in terms of their own bodies which they have set up. The fact that the State Human Rights Commission and the National Human Rights Commission, the Hurriyat and other organizations have sent, I would say, at least 300 cases to the National Human Rights Commission so far, but unfortunately, not a single case has been taken up by the National Human Rights Commission. And talking about the State Human Rights Commission, the chief of the State Human Rights Commission is on record on saying and accepting the fact that this organization or his organization is not able to take up the issues with the government, or the government's response to the violations of human rights is very dismal. So in that context, I must say that the recent statement which you must have heard from the state government, which was made by the Chief Secretary of Jammu and Kashmir government, and I must say it's a very ridiculous statement where he has said that that there's no need to investigate the issue of the mass graves because the DNA process is going to take a while, and the government doesn't have that amount of expertise to look into these issues. So it's basically a denial. They're basically denying the right. That they're basically denying the fact that that there's some sort of an accountability in terms of what is happening at the ground level. So we feel that many changes have happened in the sense that we, from a political point, I must say that one important factor which has come to light in at least the past 3 to 4 years is that there's a growing amount of interference by the armed forces, by the army, by the institution of the army in Kashmir. And I remember that that at many occasions when the human rights organizations, or even when we saw Indian leaders coming to Kashmir, parliamentarians coming to Kashmir in 2010, 2011, they did mention, at least some of them, they did openly, acknowledge the concern people have on human rights. But the way in which the Indian Army and the paramilitary forces and Indian institutions are categorically rejecting any movement forward in terms of the repealing of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. And I must say that there seems to be a very huge lobby in Kashmir within the army who don't want that any political initiatives should move forward. And sometimes we fear, and our fears are based on certain facts which have now come up in daylight. The recent books which have been written about the meadows and certain other facts have come to ground where it's now established that the Indian state, the army, institution of the army and the paramilitary forces is involved in extrajudicial killings, in killing innocent people, labeling them as militants, and then using those incidents to financially or to promote their own interests. And in fact, you might be in a sense amazed to hear that in fact last year a group of Kashmiri youth came to me and they were complaining about the fact that they belong to the border area of Kupwara, that they are being forced by the army in that region to cross over to the LOC, bring the militants and inform them so that they could kill them, and they were willing to pay them, if they give them information. So I think what is happening today on the ground is that there seems to be an interest within the Indian state, within the Indian establishment, that they want militancy to continue. They want militancy because I believe that it's very easy for India and the Indian establishment to project Kashmir as an issue of terrorism, as an issue of cross-border infiltration, rather than accepting the fact that they have an indigenous movement which they have to confront on the ground in Kashmir. So I believe that these issues are definitely something which need to be looked at by the international community, especially by the human rights organizations. And I believe that even organizations, obviously Hurriyat Conference talks about the resolution of Kashmir problem. We talk about resolution. We talk about plebiscite, about self-determination. But even those pro-India parties like the PDP and the National Conference and others are on record on saying and accepting the fact that violations of human rights are happening, and that these parties don't have any control or don't have any accountability in terms of how they can take these issues of violations forward. So I think unless and until there is accountability, there's a mechanism within the system, which there is not, unfortunately. For the last 20 years, we have been trying to look for a mechanism, some sort of accountability through the state in terms of addressing the human rights violations. Because the first issue is at least acknowledging that violations are happening. And I think we are still to reach that state. India is living in a state of denial. There's absolutely denial from the Indian state in terms of violations of human rights that are happening on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. So I say I mean the Hurriyat conference is clear that we understand the issue is political, the issue is based in history, but the fact remains that in order to make any movement forward, you can't have a situation where killings and talks or killings and, or dialogue can go hand in hand. The government of India has to take a decision in terms of what policy they want to adopt. On the one hand, we see the Indian foreign minister going to Pakistan and saying that let's make a new beginning and let us start a new chapter of bilateral relations with Pakistan. But at the same time, unabated human rights violations continue in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think you can't have dialogue and killings at the same time. So we urge the government of India, and we hope that these 169 recommendations which have been now put forward, they would be implemented in due course of time. India has now 4 years to deal with it, but we expect them that the time has come when they need to move forward, when they need to address the problems on the ground. And I think if they do so, that will definitely send a very positive message across Kashmir that the government of India is ready to accept the recommendations and move on the recommendations and try to to improve the situation on the ground. I mean, to conclude, I must say that definitely this is a very huge step. Recommendations are a very positive step, but it's all about implementation, and that implementation, only time will tell that how serious India is in terms of addressing the concerns of the Kashmiris, especially in terms of the human rights violations, the mass graves, the black laws, the AFSPA, the Public Safety Act. And I think, if these issues are addressed, only then a conducive atmosphere can be created wherein a dialogue can take place for a permanent settlement of the Kashmir issue. Thank you very much.